Hi, my name is Alex Hollingsworth. I'm a producer, composer and musician based in London, and I'm here with Native Instruments to break down a track I've written with purely the V Collection 8, Pigments 3 and the Effects Collection 2. These synths and plugins are currently 50% off with the NKS sale, so I wanted to talk you through this track I've written to show you the incredible versatility of these synths and plugins and what you can do with them to achieve great sounding results. I started off with this simple bass line using the new OBXA V update from the V Collection 8. I used the incredible stereo spread and unison detune modules in the synth to give it some width and depth, whilst rolling off the cutoff and increasing the resonance to give it some texture on the intro. I used the inbuilt reverb and chorus to give it that throwing snow style bass sound. Bassline is pretty simple, starting off on an E, going to a B, D, and finishing off on an A. Starting off on the 5 chord and going to the 2-7, which in this case is B-7, hinting at D major with the 7th on top, is slightly deceiving harmonically as you think it's initially in E major. Alongside this bass line, there's also a top E being held by Pigments 3. I used the harmonic module in the synthesizer and messed around with modulating the morph function with one of the LFOs inside of Pigments in order to give it some movement. I also automated the inbuilt reverb to make it gradually more dry and intense when the synth builds up into the drop section. The main arpeggiator is made up of Emulator II V. This is building harmonically from just holding an E an octave apart to introducing the 5th, which in this case is B, and alternating in between a straight up E major chord and an E sus4 chord. I heavily bit crushed this arpeggiator with the inbuilt effect in the synthesizer, which is based in the voice effects section. I slowly automated the filter open to create more emphasis on the build up and increasing the intensity before all the ambient elements drop out and we're left with just the heavy bass and the drums. The top line is made up of the new June 6 V update from the V Collection 8 and the Piano V2. I wanted to keep some organic elements in the track alongside the more synthetic parts, so I thought the piano would suit it nicely. The piano is introduced first, playing a simple arpeggiated line working around color tones of an E dominant 7th chord and moving to a D sus arpeggio ending on the 3rd of the chord, which is F sharp, for some stability. This is repeated and works well alongside the initial bass line. The June 6 V is working with the piano playing sustained color tones. Again, these are outlining the harmony from the bass, playing around with voice leading and creating contrary motion to the bass line, giving us a little bit more movement and interesting progressions. These have been sent to a bus with the intensity reverb from Effects Collection 2 on the Infinity preset, which is giving us this incredibly lush, lengthy reverb, filling out the space whilst the drums are gradually getting more and more intense. These drums are mostly made up of all of my own original samples which I recorded. I wanted to stick with this idea of organicness mixed with the synthetic energy brought from the synths and bass, so I layered a load of Foley related kicks, snares, hi-hats and loops underneath to create a syncopated, pulsating drum beat which is acting polyrhythmically to the main BPM of the song. I've heavily compressed these drums using the Boss Force plugin from the Effects Collection 2. to give some more punch and saturation, especially in the low end. The ability to dial these in using the 3 knobs for the dry signal, saturation and compression is incredibly handy to get the perfect amount of grip. I also use the TUBE-STA plugin to slightly glue all of the drums together, only going for around 3 to 4 dB of gain reduction. The final part of the drums has been processed by the Delay Tape 201 plugin, which I'm using mostly for sound design effect, automating the mode selector and intensity knob to create these heavily modulated drums working around the lush, spacious top lines from the synths. We then drop into the heavier part of the demo, with the bass line being made up purely of Pigments 3, with a load of modulation going on from both the LFOs and the function controls in the synthesizer. Function 1 is modulating the bit depth of the bit crusher plugin in Pigments, with the filter cutoff also being modulated by this function. The LFO is then modulating the frequency modulation in between the 2 oscillators on the synthesizer in order to create some screaming FM bass sounds, which is what the track needed at this particular part. The actual bass line itself is literally just holding an E, but with all of the movement going on from a modulation perspective, that's all it needed harmonically. This is layered with another bass from Pigments, exploring the wavetable synthesis module. The LFO is modulating the frequency modulation type alongside the phase distortion. I explored the combinate function to combine the LFO and function 1 modulators in order to modulate the filter cutoff. This, in combination with the distortion from the effects section in the synth, created a layer that slotted under the main bass part well and gave it some extra punch and depth that was needed. The final layer for this 8 bars was with the new Vocoder V in the V Collection 8. It's very subtle, but it's pedaling a high B, which is a 5th alongside the E being held in the bass. I've dropped it down a little in the mix, but with so much heavy low-end information going on, I needed a little bit more presence and air, and this filled it perfectly. I messed around with the Broken Angels preset, slowly fading it in with each beat, which hinted at the ethereal undertone of the track. After 8 bars of just bass and drums, I brought the main motif back in with some added elements. This includes a variation on the piano arpeggio from the intro, exploring major 7ths on the D major and A major chords to develop the theme. I layered this underneath with a pad made from Pigments, again exploring the wavetable synthesis module. Working with envelopes and functions to modulate the wavetable position created movement to a simple chord part. The bass and drums then drop out, and we're left with the piano and the high E that we created from the harmonic module in Pigments. I automated the reverb down towards the end as the volume is slowly being automated up. The pulsating effect right at the end was also created with Pigments in the wavetable section, simply rolling off the cutoff and modulating the wave folding and the wavetable position with a simple LFO synced to the grid by a quarter note. I wanted to finish off with how I started, very sparsely and with the same sounds to create a full circle effect. So this was the breakdown of a track I created using Arturia's V Collection 8, Pigments 3 and effects Collection 2. I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something useful. My name is Alex Hollingsworth, keep making great music, and I'll see you soon.